Yes. Okay, so we had looked at different ways of sex determination mechanisms, and first one was the environmental, where the environmental factors they decide the sex of an individual, and this usually happens in the primitive species, or even in the turtle, like the temperature dependent sex determination. Then we had looked at non-allosomic sex determination, that is non-chromosomal sex determination. So there we had seen some factors which are there, which are present in bacteria, which is fertility factor or F factor and so on. Something like that, that is getting transferred, and the one which donates it is male and the one which receives it is female. So that way, even in chlamydomonas, there were positive and negative strand and so on. So that is non-allosomic or non-chromosomal sex determination. So again, there is no involvement of chromosomes as such. And the third type was the allosomic or chromosomal sex determination. In this, there were two different ways of chromosomal sex determination. That was, one was male heterogamy and the other was female heterogamy. In male heterogamy, the males will form two types of gamete, that is autosomes plus X and autosomes plus Y. Or the other type of sex determination without Y chromosome was XX and XO, right? So that was XO, that means one of the chromosome, which was ideally Y chromosome, is absent, and there is only one copy of this X chromosome, and mainly found in insects. So that was another type of male heterogamy, where the male will still produce two types of gamete. In female heterogamy, now here the female will produce two gametes. So again, these two examples where the female is producing Z and W chromosomes with their autosomes. So these were the two different types of gametes. Male will only produce one gamete, and in the another scenario where it is ZZ, ZO type of sex determination, there will be only one Z chromosome in the female, and male will have two Z chromosome, and that way the offspring will be produced. So like I had mentioned, the chances of this offspring, like the chance of male and female offspring being formed will be 50-50, like even in this case, two females, two males, and so on. So that way, that is the chromosomal sex determination. Now the last type we haven't seen, we will start it now. That is haploid diploid mechanism of the sex determination. This is usually seen in case of honeybees, wasps, ants, and sawflies, where females, including those queens and workers in honeybees, they are diploid, and they develop from the fertilized egg. Fertilized egg means there will be involvement of male gamete having 2n sets of chromosome, that is diploid number of chromosome. While the males, they are haploid, which are called as drones. Males are haploid, that means they have single set of chromosome, that is n chromosome, and they develop from unfertilized eggs. So if the female lay eggs, and if those eggs are fertilized, they will clearly develop into another female. But if female lays eggs and that will be unfertilized, that will surely develop into the male. So that is the simple analogy here, and that is what is haploid diploid mechanism, wherein the sex is determined by the sex sets of chromosome and not by the presence of X or Y chromosomes at all. So the female will produce haploid eggs by meiosis, while the males will produce haploid sperm again by mitosis. So that is the different process here. So usually in male or any other animal species, the sperms are also produced by meiosis. But in this case, specifically the haploid diploid mechanism, the sperms, that is the male gamete, is produced by mitosis. Now why? Because simply the males, they have haploid set of chromosome. So if they are going by meiosis, that haploid will be turned into only half. That means, let's say if the honeybee male has 22 sets of chromosome, total chromosome. If it is haploid, then it will be 11 sets. And if it will undergo meiosis, it will be 11 divided by 2, that is 5.5 chromosome. So that way, if the male will undergo meiosis process for production of the gametes, it will reduce the number of chromosome further. And that should not happen. And that is why the males will produce the sperms by the mitosis process, while the females will produce haploid eggs by the meiosis process, because females are diploid, males are haploid. I hope this part is clear. Now the eggs are fertilized to restore the 2 sets of chromosome. That is the female gamete eggs. They are fertilized to restore 2 sets of chromosome with the male gamete and develop into female. And the unfertilized eggs, they will develop into males. So in honeybees, males have 16 chromosome and females have 32 chromosome. And if the males are undergoing meiosis process, 16 divided by 2, that is 8 chromosomes will be present in the gamete, which will be not a good ploidy for the reproduction process. So that way, it does not undergo meiosis, rather it undergoes mitosis. So 16, it will produce all the sperms which will have 16 chromosome, while the females will produce eggs which have 16 chromosome, which is half of 32 by meiosis process. So that is the haploid diploid mechanism, which is just depicted here. So female, which has 32, which is diploid, male, which has 16, which is haploid, spelling is wrong here, will undergo meiosis. Female will undergo meiosis to produce haploid eggs. Male will undergo mitosis to produce haploid sperms. Now, if the haploid egg and haploid sperm fuse, it will form diploid female. And if these sets of eggs which remain unfertilized, they will produce males only, right? So now, if you look at these features of the haploid diploid mechanism, sperms are produced by mitosis. That is one exception than the natural course. The male has no father but has grandfather. Now imagine these are unfertilized egg which are produced only from female and they have no father, but they will surely have grandfather, because their mother, that is this female, is formed of haploid egg and haploid sperm, right? So these individuals, they have no father because they are only produced from one female, but they surely have grandfather. And a male cannot have sons. This male which was produced cannot have sons. It can only produce female, because all those eggs, all those sperms, they are all going to fertilize here, and there is no chance that they can form the sons, but they can have grandsons. Same way, like how these males, they have grandfathers, obviously this will also have, this male will also have grandson from this female. So that way, the male has no father but has grandfather, and a male cannot have sons but has grandsons. So these are the peculiar characteristics of the haplodiploid mechanism. Okay, any question here? Anyone? I hope this mechanism is understood, which is just half set of chromosome in one of the gender, that is male here.
Sir, I understood this, but I have a question in general, in particular honeybees.
Yeah.
I thought only the queen is the one who, mother of all the bees.
Right.
So these females, they go out of the hive and they become their own queen of their own hive, right? Or they also produce things and they all work in the same hive.
Sorry, what is the question exactly?
The females or the female offspring can also produce this thing, more offspring, right? So if a female I'm asking you if a female does that in their own hive, or they have to go somewhere else and make their own hive to do that.
No, they can do it there itself, no? That is why the number of bees, honeybees, they keep on increasing. It is not just one female who does it.
But the queen is supposed to be the one who, all of them are supposed to be her direct children, right?
Yeah, in a way, yes. But then those children, when they grow up, they also produce later offsprings, no? The next generation. It's a continuous process. So it will keep on happening.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so that is the haplodiploid mechanism. So with this, I guess, yeah, we are done with those mechanisms of sex determination. Now we will move on to the next topic, and this just a reminder again, please go through this. It's not even more than a 2-page of the textbooks. So please go through this over the weekend also, and you let me know if you have any questions here. Yeah, except this part which we are yet to discuss in that with respect to that sex determining portion, which will come later. So we will move on to the variation. So in case of variation, it simply refers to the morphological, that is the physical characteristics, physiological, that is the internal processes, cytological, cell-based processes, or the behavioral differences, that is behavior patterns. So variations are these morphological, physiological, cytological, and behavioral differences among the individuals of one species and also the offsprings of the same parents. So that is what is known as variation. So that is the definition. In general, variation, we know it's whatever difference you find in one species across the individuals, that is what is variation. It can be with respect to any physical trait or any internal characteristic. Like, let's say two individuals, they may not have same amount of insulin being produced in their body, and that is again a physiological event or a process, and that is again a variation. Or the amount of hormone that is being produced in two individuals is again a different, so that is again an example of variation. Or the skin color is different, or the hairstyle is different, curly hair or straight hair. So all of these, whether morphological, physiological, or cell cytological, for example, the number of neurons in your body, or number of liver cells in one's body, or behavioral differences which are obviously very unique. So all these characteristics, they lead to variation. So variations, these are the rules of nature, like they are bound to happen, and no two individuals, they are identical, like not 100% identical. Even the identical twins, when placed in different environment, they show differences in terms of their behavior. Ultimately, there are certain changes with respect to the emotional or neuronal connections, and that way they show differences. So that is the amount of variation we have around us. Yeah. So now there are two different types of variations, that is called as non-heritable and heritable. Non-heritable, you can simply imagine they are not being carried over across generation, which are also called as somatic, which happens in the somatic cells, or somatogenic variations. So they occur in the somatic cells due to the environmental factors, and then these are the non-heritable variations. They are transmitted, they are not transmitted to offspring and are lost with the death of that particular individual. So let's say I have a particular what do you say, a patch on my body, right, which came to me much later, right? Let's say when I was 25 years of the age, I developed a black patch or a white patch on my hand, forearm, which is a somatic variation, not everyone around me will have it, right? So that is a somatic variation which occurred due to some environmental factor. Maybe I was burned or whatsoever, you know. So because of that, and that will not be carried forward to the next generation, right? So that is what is somatic or non-heritable variation. And they are also called as acquired variations because they are acquired over the lifetime of that particular individual. So it's very simple. That is non-heritable variation. Now the other type is called as heritable, or what is also called as genetic, or also known as germinal variation. Heritable because it pass on across the generation, genetic because it is related to the genetics, and germinal because it is with respect to the germinal cells or gamete cells. So these are passed on to the offsprings, that is the heritable variations, and these arise due to the changes in the genes of gametes, that is sperms and ova. During that gamete formation, some genes they are changed, and that leads to the variation. And these variations, they are evolutionary, they have evolutionary significance because they are being passed on across different generations. They have evolutionary significance. Most of the diseases that we know of, like hemophilia, color blindness, blood groups, baldness, or intelligence, these are all heritable variations. Now, we are not talking of only sex chromosome linked variations, right? These are in general variations that are being produced in the gametes and that are being carried forward in the generations across. That is what is heritable or genetic variations. So these are the two types. Any question here so far? Anyone? Okay, so then we can move forward. What are these different causes of variations? Now there can be different, like we know these facts already. We just have to put them here together in terms of these 3 points. First one is independent assortment and random separation, right? Independent assortment, we know whenever there is 2 or more traits involved with one individual during the gamete formation, they are separated irrespective of the other trait. And this we had already seen, so I need not explain it here again. And again, those gametes which are formed after the independent assortment, they undergo random separation, right? So that is what is the first point. Now in human, we have 23 chromosomes, right? And a pair with 23 chromosomes can have 8.4 million types of gametes. That means 8.4 million types of sperms, as well as 8.4 million types of ovas. So that way, these many different types of gametes can be formed. And that too, they have further more chance, which we'll see in the last part. So reciprocal combination, which is the second point of continuous variation of the linked genes. Now, because there can be a change in the, now this we are talking only with one set of chromosome, right? Now those genes, they can be either dominant or they can be recessive, and that way, depending on reciprocal means whether, let's say, A is female and B is male, or B is female and A is male. So that means first letter being female, so A here is female and B here is female, depending on what genes they are carrying. So that way, this reciprocal combination will also lead to further more variations. It will not be dependent on male and female, but those reciprocal crosses, depending on what genes are coming to them based on their parents through the gamete formation, will ultimately lead to the variation. So reciprocal combination of the linked genes specifically ultimately will have changes in the number of dominant and recessive genes in the father or mother, and based on those there will be again further variation, that is continuous variation. That means it will go on. Random fusion of gametes. Now we know there are X number of sperms being deposited in the female genital tract, and there are one gamete from the female which is produced, but that gamete will also have chance of different possible combinations like this 8.4 million times, because there will still be 23 chromosomes and a pair of it. So that way, if you multiply the male gamete with female gamete, these many type of possible combination or possible individuals that can be formed, or there is a possibility of those individual, and that is what is random fusion of gametes. So these are the three causes of the continuous variation. Again, any question in these 3 points? I hope you understood this, which are briefly explained here. Any question?
I didn't understand reciprocal combination.
Reciprocal combination is whatever is the male genotype. If you carry over that genotype to the female, what will be the possibility of the offspring, and will that lead to the variation? So that is what is reciprocal combination. If you remember those reciprocal crosses that we had learned, that means you have offsprings being produced and F1 offsprings from the parents, and those F1 offspring being crossed back with the one of the parent, right? If it is male to female or female to male, either ways. So that will lead to the different sets of linked genes, and that will ultimately cause the variation. Though the family is same, the amount of variation that it will give is still quite a lot. So that is what is reciprocal combination. Any other question? Anyone? I hope Akshay you got that.
Yeah, kind of. I'll have to do it in my notebook and see.
You check what reciprocal crosses are. You will understand it. It's not difficult at all. It's very easy concept. Yeah, just maybe you Google what reciprocal cross is, and there you will get it. Okay, so these are the three causes which leads to the continuous variation. Now there are certain causes which can discontinue the variation as well. There is certain variation which is happening across the generation, which can be discontinued due to some factors. And what are those? These are again 3 points, that is changes in the structure of the gene, which we know simply as mutations, or changes in structure of chromosome, which we know as chromosomal aberrations. And there are changes in the number of chromosome, that is genomic mutation. Remember, gene mutations and genomic mutations are different. Genomic refers to the whole number of chromosome, that is the whole of the genome of that individual, and gene mutation specifically refers to one particular gene within the chromosome. So that way, the changes in structure of gene, changes in structure of chromosome, and changes in number of chromosome, these are the 3 factors which leads to discontinuous variation. So we will see one by one all of these in detail. So the first one, that is the gene mutation. Now, in simpler language, what we know of gene mutation is, excuse me, there is a particular sequence of nucleotide. If these genes or if these nucleotides are changed, either in terms of their number or in terms of their arrangement, that is what is your gene mutation. So changes in the structure of the gene, including changes in the number or arrangement of the nucleotide, is known as gene mutation. It is also called as intragenic because it is happening within the gene, not in between two genes, but within that particular gene. That is what is intragenic mutation. Gene mutations, they are sudden. I mean, they can happen randomly at times, and they can happen very suddenly, and they can be stable changes in the DNA. That means if they are stable, they will be carried forward as it is. So that is what is gene mutation. Now, changes, the example is change in a single nitrogenous base, that is the single nucleotide base of the gene of this beta chain of hemoglobin will cause the sickle cell anemia. We know there is normal hemoglobin and there is sickle cell hemoglobin, which is a mutated form of the gene. So there is just one single nucleotide base pair which is changed, and that one nucleotide base can cause sickle cell anemia, which is decreased capacity of the oxygen carrying by the hemoglobin.
So
Yes.
like there are so many cells, right? So even if in one cell the gene changes, how will it make a difference?
It's these, that is when the mutations we are talking of, these are actually your heritable variations, right, or germinal ones. If they are non-heritable ones, they will not be like passed on to the neighboring cells until and unless they are dividing by mitosis process and creating many copies. There they will be carried. But if it is in the germ line or the gametes, these mutations, then it will be producing these similar copies of the mutated gene.
Yeah, but so like
will have it.
even in the germ line, like one cell will get mutated, right? Like all, like it's a probability, right? Like mutations are random. You can't say which mutation will happen where, right? Like if some X-rays are put and some mutation happens, you can't predict it. So it's not possible that the same mutation will happen in all of the like germinal cells, right?
So what we are talking about is, let's say a particular sperm which is being produced has the mutated gene, and that sperm has fertilized with the egg. So obviously that mutated gene is carried to the next generation, right? So all the cells of that new offspring which will be generated will have all mutated gene. So that is what I am talking about. And what you are referring to is the different scenario where the fertilization has already happened and then the mutation is happening, correct?
No, sir. No. I thought that it has a very less probability that the next generation will get mutated, right? I mean, there are so many million sperms, and you can say 4 or something will have the mutated.
Or the parent has that mutation, and let's say in the testis cells itself, due to some exposure to UV or whatsoever, the parent testis cells or these primary, what is that, spermatogonium cells, they are mutated. All the sperms that it will produce will be mutated then. So that way. Okay, so the example was that a single change of nucleotide in beta chain of hemoglobin can cause sickle cell anemia. Now, similarly, these mutations, they are also responsible for these lethal genes, what we call as they lead to the death of a person, because there are certain serious consequences of that particular gene. Or simplest example being, like let's say, during the development, we are in need of certain specific symmetry of the body. And if there are genes which are mutated, which distort the symmetry of the body, ultimately it will lead to the death of the person. The person will not be able to grow at all in terms of its development. So that way, that is an example of lethal gene which leads to the death of a person. Albino character, we all know, can also lead to the white skin type. So that is the albino character, that is absence of melanin. Chlorophyll deficiencies in plant, like just a single mutation in that chlorophyll gene can lead to the deficiency of chlorophyll. So these are all the examples of the gene mutations that occur in nature.
So why is albino character lethal?
Albino character is a mutation.
No, why is it lethal?
Albino character is not lethal.
Okay.
These lethal genes, that is one type, one example of mutation. Albino character is one example of mutation.
Okay.
What is mentioned here. Albino character is not lethal. Now, so these mutons, it's the smallest portion of the gene that can mutate or that can change. That is a single nucleotide base pair. So the smallest mutant possible in a gene is the single nitrogenous base pair, right? So that is what is called as mutant. So whatever that change is happening within like 1000 base pair of the gene, there might be one single nucleotide which is changed, and that particular portion is called as mutant, or it can be 10 base pairs they are being changed. That is still a mutant, but there the mutant is a little longer. So what we are talking is the smallest possible mutant is a single nitrogenous base, and it can be bigger than that, like 2 base pair, 3 base pair, or 10 base pair, or 50 base pair, whatever that mutant is. So the mutant is simply the gene, a portion of the gene which is changing, can be a single base pair or can be many base pair. So that is mutant. Now, what are the causes of this gene mutation? Again, there can be changes in the number of nucleotides in the DNA segment, what we know as cistron. We'll come to this word later, but for the time being, you just remember, because next chapter is all about the cistron and so on. So there we will study it in more detail. Here you need not know this term as such. So there are changes in the number of nucleotides in the DNA segment, or what is also called as frame shift mutation. We will again discuss these parts in more detail. And there is replacement of the base pair in the DNA segment. So there is change in number, or there can be change in the or replacement of a base pair in the DNA segment, and that is also called as substitution mutation. So frame shift mutation and the substitution mutation, these are the two types of the gene mutation, or rather two causes of gene mutation. Now these mutations here, which is shown in the diagram, right? So the gene mutation, they can be of the transition type. Transition in the sense, purine, let me show you what is purine and pyrimidine. I don't know if you are aware of this, but these purines, these are adenine and guanine. These are two membered nitrogenous base pairs, and pyrimidines, these are single membered nitrogenous base pair, single membered ring structures. So that is purine and pyrimidine. Purines are adenine and guanine. Pyrimidines are thymine and cytosine. And if it is RNA, instead of thymine, it will be uracil. So in RNA, you will have cytosine and uracil. If it is DNA, you will have thymine and cytosine. Purine always pairs with the pyrimidine, right? So that is adenine will always pair with thymine, or if it is RNA, adenine will pair with uracil, and the guanine will always pair with cytosine, or the other way, pyrimidines pairing with the purine base pairs. So that is the purine and pyrimidine. So what we are talking here is in terms of transition, it is the purine is replaced by another purine or pyrimidine by another pyrimidine. That means purine replaced by another purine will be adenine will be replaced by the guanine, or thymine will be replaced by cytosine, or the other way, guanine replaced by adenine and cytosine replaced by thymine. I hope you are getting this particular fact. So that is what is the transition type of gene mutation. Transition, that means they are transitioning from one type of purine to other type of purine, or one type of pyrimidine to other type of pyrimidine. So AT, this will get replaced by GC, that is triple bond GC. A will get replaced by another purine, that is G, and ultimately the pair will of course be replaced, the counterpart of that G. Then transversion. Transversion, it's a purine is replaced by a pyrimidine here. That means instead of adenine, it will have thymine or cytosine, or instead of guanine, it will have thymine or cytosine, or other way, pyrimidine will be replaced by a purine. That means if the sequence has thymine, it will change to adenine or guanine, or if a sequence has cytosine, it will change to adenine or guanine. So that is what is transversion. That means it is changing across the purine or pyrimidine. So that is transversion. Now the substitution mutation after a single codon which replaces like if there is a change in the single base pair, right? Can be substitution or can be frame shift. These mutations after a single codon change will lead to the replacement of the single amino acid in a protein. Now just the same example is given here, I guess.
So,
Yes.
but how can a purine be replaced by a pyrimidine? Then two pyrimidines will be connected together.
No. So when, let's say, purine is replaced by pyrimidine, let's say instead of adenine, thymine goes in there,
Yeah.
or cytosine goes in there.
So adenine was already connected to thymine before, let's just say.
Correct.
So instead of adenine, if thymine goes, then there'll be two thymine.
So that part I will clear it here now. Let's say, for example, this is the DNA. Yeah, you have AAA, ATG, CTT, CTC. Yeah, that is the normal gene, and this will be mRNA. So instead of A pairing with T in DNA, because it is mRNA, it will pair with UUU. So UAC. So this will be the sequence normally.
Yeah.
Now in substitution, let's say A is getting sorry, here G is getting replaced by T. Now G is getting replaced by T. So that means instead of purine, pyrimidine is coming there. Correct? No, sorry, my bad. G, instead of G, it is A. Instead of G, it is the getting replaced by transition type of mutation, that is adenine. Purine is getting replaced with another purine.
Yeah. Okay.
Now in that case, G was ideally supposed to pair with T. So instead, if it is changing to A, it is making this mutation change. That is, it is creating to the another amino acid, lysine.
So but that's transition, right?
That's transition, correct.
I'm asking about the second one, the transversion.
So same way, you assume now the original DNA strand has C. Yeah.
Yes.
Is a pyrimidine base pair. Instead, there comes A or G. So
but like if a purine is placed by a pyrimidine and okay, so it's just the other way around.
I didn't
okay, I got it, sir.
Okay, so it is just like one nucleotide can get replaced with any other three. So here, if there is adenine in the sequence, it can get replaced with the guanine, can get replaced with thymine, can get replaced with cytosine. Yeah, we have just classified in the sense, if it is this replacement, purine to purine, that we call as transition. If it is purine to pyrimidine or the other way, we call it transversion. That is the only case. But any nucleotide base pair can get replaced with any other three. Yeah, that is what is the idea behind it. Okay, so I hope you got this part. So in this case, ultimately what happens is, this was the actual protein sequence, that is phenylalanine, tyrosine, glutamic acid. I hope it is glutamic acid, or it can be glutamine, but yeah, either of these two, I have to check that. But this is the sequence, and when a single change happens, that is from C to T, so ultimately in the mRNA, G to A change happens, and that will lead to the change in one of the amino acid, that is lysine. And if this is the site of binding or functional site of this protein,
So but like it's supposed to be the other way around, right? So C is getting replaced by T, right? But C is a pyrimidine and T is also a pyrimidine. So one pyrimidine is getting replaced by another pyrimidine, and one purine is getting replaced by another purine. So it's supposed to be transition, right?
This one, yes.
Yes, sir.
This one is transition.
But it's written substitution, right?
Because that is a type of substitution, no? So what?
Okay, so transition and transversion both are type of substitution.
Yeah, it is a replacement. That is what is transition and transversion. We are yet to come to the frame shift.
Okay.
Yeah. So these two are, like you mentioned, these are the types of substitution. It can get replaced by any other base pair, purine or pyrimidine, and that will still lead to certain changes. Now there is another phenomena which we call as Wobble phenomena, which we'll see in the next class. If the base pair changes in the last part or last portion of the base pair, sometimes it may not lead to the change at all. Change in the amino acid, there will be change in the sequence. Let's say this CTT is getting replaced with some other, last T is getting replaced with some other, and that may not lead always to the change in the amino acid which is happening here. What is that phenomena? We'll see there. But as of now, the first base pair or any base pair change can lead to the change in the amino acid, which is ultimately leading to the change in the protein structure formation. So that is substitution. Now,
so is it possible that both are purines or both are pyrimidines, like adjacent to each other, or do they always have to be the opposite?
it is possible that they, during the synthesis process, like whether it is DNA synthesis, that is replication, or DNA to mRNA synthesis, that is transcription, they might have some mistakes like this. But then there is always a mechanism of curation. Like after the DNA is synthesized, there is a machinery which will check, okay, if A instead of A there is A, if T there is T. So that way it will keep checking individually, and if there are mistakes, they will be replaced. Now there is a less chance that these mistakes will be still left as it is. That machinery which is checking, it misses that particular change. So there is a chance, but again that does not happen to that great extent. It is a rare chance.
So if it happens, so like they won't form a bond at all, so the gene won't affect it.
Yeah,
Like,
so there will be always DNA double helix which will not be allowed to form bond, and usually then such cells again undergo further process of curation, or they will be leading to the apoptosis, because there is a like change in the particular gene.
so they won't like affect it at all, right? Because they aren't forming a bond, so it's like they're non-existent, or do they affect?
So if it comes to expression of that particular gene, yes, it will affect. If it comes to mRNA synthesis, it will not affect. That will just lead to the mutation in that mRNA.
Okay.
Right? So if it is, let's say, this is the DNA and it has its counterpart. Now here it is mRNA written, but let's assume there is another copy which is complementary to this DNA strand. Right? Now if instead of C, it becomes C, and here also it becomes C, which is not a pair as such, right? Or purine pairing with another purine, or pyrimidine pairing with another pyrimidine. That way, if it is pairing it up, and if this gene is going to express immediately after this particular protein, and if this gene is leading to the mutation, and if that is a certain very important mutation that is happening, so ultimately the cell function will be affected, and that will lead to the death of the cell at the end. But if it is just mRNA transcription, that from this C, here also it becomes C instead of G, and that is being carried forward, right? So that will be carried as a genetic mutation, maybe to at least to the offspring cells, if not to the next generation, but at least to the offspring cell, those mutations will be carried. And that is when we say, depending on what is the amount of mutation in one particular individual, that is still fine. But if it is with the reproductive cells, that is surely going to affect the next generation. Did you get what I said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, how much time do I have? I have to take frame shift mutation 23. I guess I can finish it. We will come back to this in the next class, but let me use the board for frame shift mutation. I don't want to rub those hands, but I guess I will have to. Maybe I'll go in here. Oh, someone took away the charts. So what friendship refers to? Let's say there is a gene sequence A, T, G, C, A, T, random sequence I am taking. A, G, C, T, A, right? This is the sequence of one particular gene which is leading to one protein formation. Genes are never so small, but we are just taking as an example. Now, what is friendship is always this codon, it's always in triplicate. So one triplicate will lead to certain amino acid formation. Now these codons will lead to certain amino acid formation, right? That means, let's say there is phenylalanine or proline or some other amino acid. These are being coded by one particular genetic code that is we call as codon. Yeah. So, and if there is a frame shift, now what does frame shift refers to? Let's say there is addition of some base pair. So in ATG, I add here A. Wait, let me use color so it will be more clear. So let's say I add this A here, right? Now because of this addition of A, what is happening is this codon they are changing. So first one will always be ATG, which is same code, but then next one will change to ACA, right? This becomes next code. Then it becomes TAG, TAG. Then it becomes CTA, and then there is one more A. So you see, just addition of one code or one nitrogenous base pair can lead to the frame shift mutation. So now here the amino acid will be surely different than this one, which originally was CAT. Here it has changed to ACA. That means amino acid will change. AGC, here it is TAG. That means there is amino acid change. So just because of one single addition of base pair, it will lead to the frame shift. Now in the other scenario, let's say there is, this was the original sequence. I hope you got this. Yeah. So in other scenario, instead of one addition, there is, let's say, this deletion. C is gone. So I am just writing with color and I am cutting it. So that means that is deleted. So now what will happen is the sequence will be A, T, G. That is first amino acid. Now C is gone, deleted. So the sequence will change to A, T, A. Right? That is next three amino acid. Then ATA, then it will be G, C, T, and there will be A. Now you see again, the original sequence was CAT, it has changed to ATA, AGC, it has changed to GCT. So that means there will be change in the amino acids. Correct? So because of this change in amino acid, protein structure is obviously going to change, and that is what is called as frame shift mutation. Can be because of the addition, that is something is being added, and can be 1, 2, 3 or any number of nucleotide bases, or it can be deletion. Again, it can be any number of deletion of nucleotide bases, can be 2, 3, 4. Now you might wonder, let's say we delete these three. So instead of doing this, you say this deletion happens. 3 nucleotides are gone as a deletion. Then there will be change in the sequence. Still, this is gone. So instead of second amino acid, AGC will come forward, TAA will come forward. So that is again a change in the sequence of the amino acid. And if this amino acid is very important, that is surely going to affect the function of this protein, which is mutated one. And that is what is called as frame shift mutation.
Also,
Yes.
but like I heard that most of the genes in DNA, they don't code for anything.
They do not
Code for anything. Like most of them don't code for anything. Like a minority codes for something.
So we'll come to that part in the next slide. I'll just show you that quickly.
No, sir, I had a question regarding what you said, like on the board.
So yeah, so just let me finish this. So there are different types of mutations: nonsense, missense, or same sense. So we will come to this, and there that part will get covered. Yeah, say it.
Yeah. So, sir, like if we remove one of the nucleotides, like A, for example, then the whole DNA molecule will shift like one step. So the whole molecule will be entirely useless then, because now none of the proteins are like each amino acid is wrong then.
Correct.
But if we remove 3 at once or add 3 at once, there might be a chance, like there's a big chance that that whole group might not code for anything.
Correct.
So the pairings will remain the same, just 1 or 2 in between amino acids will be absent, and the molecule might still function.
Correct, that is right. So that is what is the same sense mutation. So again,
So it's preferable to cut or add DNA multiples of 3.
So if you see this is same sense mutation. Whatever was the original change, whatever was the original case, and even after mutation, something similar is being produced. And that is what is same sense mutation. So, but we will come to that part. Yeah. So that is the, like, even after changing something, it is not changing the actual genetic makeup of the protein or so.
Sir, how many DNA chains are there in one chromosome?
How many?
DNA molecules, like DNA molecules are there in one chromosome.
The chromosomal length is like drastically different, like from chromosome 1 to, so it can even go up to I guess 10.5 mega base pairs, that is kilo and mega.
No, I'm talking about molecules, so like DNA molecules. So there might be 2 or 3
within
or
one
4.
chromosome.
Yes, sir. In one chromosome.
One chromosome can have any number of genes, which is nothing but those many number of DNA segments.
No, the whole molecule, sir, the double helix, the whole molecule itself I'm talking about.
I still didn't get the question.
So it's like this. We have 23 pairs. So if we if that mutation happens where one of the nucleotides gets added or subtracted, then that whole molecule won't be able to code for any protein, any existing protein, because
it's not the whole chromosome will not be able to.
Yeah, the whole molecule, the whole DNA molecule, that chain, because the order is like changed for every amino acid it would have produced. So we can, if we know the average number of such DNA molecules in a chromosome, we can find out the percentage change in the human being itself, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so that's why I was asking.
But those numbers, they are depending on the chromosomes. Which chromosome are we talking about?
So, but if we take the average, then also it works, right? Because then the effect will be the same.
No. Because the amount of mutation, let's say one particular chromosome might have several mutations and one chromosome may not have any mutation. So that average does not work there.
No, not the average of mutations. We are assuming that there is only one mutation in one chromosome, like in one nucleotide. Everything else is the same. The average is the number of DNA molecules in the whole of the chromosome. So different chromosomes might have different DNA molecules, right?
Correct.
Like sex ones are short, so they'll have less. So that way.
But then I did not get, why would you want to average something?
So like I just want to know the number of DNA molecules in a chromosome.
So that you can get by Google. I don't know the exact numbers.
Oh, sir, I actually tried. I'm not getting it. I mean, they only give base pairs.
I will give you that number. I will find it out. But what will you do with that? That is my question.
Okay, so it's like this. Let's just say
one has, let's say, 20 or 100 molecule, for example. 100 genes are present on chromosome 1. Start from there.
Genes? Like, no, like, sir, we are interested in DNA molecules, right?
DNA is what? Genes only, no?
Yeah, okay. But
So,
it's a chain, na?
now, let me clarify one fact before you say it.
Okay.
So, when we talk of one particular protein or one particular function, it is a DNA molecule, and because it is coding for one particular characteristic, can be a protein, can be a function, that is what we call as gene, because it's a functional unit or functional DNA molecule. That
So,
is
like, a gene is a small part of the whole DNA molecule, right?
no
So, the DNA molecule is very, very long, right?
DNA molecule, as in DNA sequence you are talking about.
Yeah, the whole sequence.
But these are interchangeable terms. In terms of what is functional, we call as gene, which is a part of DNA molecule. That way you are right. But then if you stretch it, that ultimately becomes several of the genes, and then it becomes chromosome.
Yeah, so like one DNA molecule will have multiple genes, right?
One DNA molecule will have multiple genes.
It will code for multiple.
Don't say DNA molecule, say chromosome have multiple genes.
No, but chromosome might have multiple DNA. That's the point. That's why I'm saying DNA molecule.
No. You are wrong there. DNA molecule is not a separate molecule. Whole stretch is called as molecule.
Yeah. So
again, in case of proteins, you have several amino acids. You don't call it, there are several proteins. You call it that whole stretch is one protein and there are several amino acids. Similarly, chromosome is a sequence of DNA, that is whole DNA molecule, within which shorter fragments of DNA will be one particular gene. It does not mean that there will be individual DNA molecules.
So you're saying that one chromosome is composed of only one DNA molecule. I'm saying there's a discontinuity, sir.
But there is no one or many DNA molecule. It's just DNA. We don't say molecule as in DNA molecule. What you are analyzing it in terms of that atom molecule and then it becomes substance. That is not the analogy here at all.
So, but in the end, it is a molecule, right? Because it's
Correct.
combined of many atoms and it's connected by bonds.
Correct.
Therefore, it's a molecule.
The way you are saying it is wrong, because DNA molecule will be only one molecule.
Yeah, it is one molecule. So I'm saying how many number of those one molecules are there in the entire in one chromosome.
Again, the same thing. One chromosome will be called as one DNA molecule. That way.
Yeah, that's so like you are saying that the whole chromosome, there is no discontinuity between the chain. So the whole chromosome is one long chain.
Correct.
And so that means there are only like 23 pairs of the whole chains.
But 23 pairs are not connected to each other.
Yeah, they aren't connected to each other. They are individual chains.
One is separate, two is separate, three is separate, that way.
So in the whole of the chromosome, you're saying that there's no discontinuity.
No.
There might be some, right? Like two individual strands of DNA in, okay, fine. Okay, so yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. So like the whole, there's only one chain in one chromosome, no discontinuity. So I'll just calculate it fast.
So no.
No, but sir, if it's completely continuous and if you remove one or you
the
add
entire
one,
chromosome will be changed.
Chromosome is gone.
Yeah, so that I'm calculating that percentage change in it.
That is the point of genomic mutation then. You remember the one of the point that I made?
No, but earlier, sir, you said that if one this thing amino acid is changed or something is added or something is removed, then the whole chromosome does not change. That is why the doubt came.
Now I got your point. So see, the last point here is changes in the number of chromosomes or even the number of genes within a particular chromosome, that will still be genomic mutation. Yeah. Now what you are referring to, sorry, what you said, Pratham, no, Akshay at the end, I missed it.
I said that if you're adding
yeah. So correct, got it. So now what you are assuming is you have, let's say, this particular chromosome, yeah, and you have several genes in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What you have assumed is probably there is second gene which is right next to this. like this. That is not the case. So if there is a change in this, let's say this line refers to the mutation, then if it is completely continuous, then there will be change. Continuous in the sense, the gene is discontinuous, but the DNA molecule goes on. What that means is there will be coding sequence in between, then there will be non-coding sequence, then there will be coding sequence which is one gene, again some non-coding sequence, again some coding sequence of the gene.
But if there is a coding sequence or if there's not a coding sequence, that's irrelevant.
No,
The whole DNA, the whole molecule will still be changed.
no. If there is a mutation in this, it only restricts to this gene. It does not shift to this.
Sir, but if like, if you remove one gene, it's like you just take 3 pairs, right? Like three genes. So one gene will enter either another genome or it will be removed from another genome.
Yes, sir. So then I have a question. So for the non-coding part of it, are they also in groups of 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, then it will change the whole
So
chromosome.
that is the whole point. No, I am telling you, because every time certain function or translation of the gene happens, that is transcription, translation, the transcription factors or those machinery, they will go and sit on the first nucleotide codon of the gene and
So
not
they'll
of the
basically
stretch.
ignore that non-coding part. They'll skip it. So it will start again from where it is supposed to be coding.
Exactly.
Okay, fine. I got it then.
For next gene, it will be recognized as what is the starting of the second gene. It goes and sit there, then it continues. What is the sequence for the third gene? It goes and continue there. So that way, whatever has changed in the first gene, or even if whole of the first gene is gone, still it will not affect the other genes. That is the beauty of the genetics there.
No, but sir, won't that create a lot of confusion if it's skipping the non-coding part? Because let's say the first part of that gene is changed, then it will skip that whole gene.
No, sorry, come again. If the
So
first
you said that it skips the non-coding part and it identifies the first part of the next gene, right? Whatever is transcripting or whatever. Yeah, so if that first part is changed slightly, then it won't identify the whole gene because it doesn't know where to start.
No, so that is why there is always a starting codon in each gene. Each gene I'm talking about. ATG sequence is always the starting sequence of each and every gene, which codes for methionine amino acid. So whichever protein you have, a complete functional protein will always start with methionine.
Yeah, so let's say it changes to something like what did you say? Something alanine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it's changed, then it won't be able to identify that it starts over here, right? So it will that entire gene, it won't recognize it.
Yeah, that is true. But then that depends on, still it depends on what is the functional site of the protein. It is not just that if the gene is not, the translation machinery is not able to recognize the first codon, it will still go on like translating. Protein will be formed. Where to break that protein, that is from the first starting codon to the end codon, that starting codon may not be there. So that protein will be fused with something else, right? That's where the problem will be. But if the functional site of protein is still exposed outside on the protein structure, that protein will be still functional. Yeah, it depends on what is the function, where is the functional site of the protein, are there any additional sites with which protein can function. So there are also some backup mechanism for the protein function. So if they are in place, then there will be no change. If nothing works, then that function is gone or that function does not happen. So there is quite a lot to it. Okay, shall we stop here? It's already 43. Yeah, next class we can discuss this again. That is tomorrow we will meet at 11:30. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, fine then. Bye bye people. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
Did you draw this?
No, that's Taru from class 10.
Oh, it's really nice.
Yeah, everyone has been saying. That's why I didn't want to rub it. I wrote it on the side.